Hey YouTube, this is Kevin Boland of Boland Small Engine, and on the table we have that opposed L-head twin cylinder carburetor that I'm continuing off of in a previous video. I'm going to start off by telling you guys that there is an upper and lower body to these carburetors, and that typically the passages in each must be thoroughly cleaned. Okay? If you watch my other video, I had explained that there are several passages in these carburetors, and that the best tool to use for cleaning them is a pin vise and a very small drill index that typically comes along with the pin vise. I of course got this pin vise online. I think I gave between $6 and $8 for it, and it's a very handy little tool. So as I was saying, guys, you want to clean this passage, this passage, this passage, this passage, this passage, and this passage right here on the lower body of this carburetor. Now I will tell you guys that there is of course the main jet, okay, which goes inside this hole here, that has to be thoroughly cleaned as well. And the only reason that I haven't mentioned it up to this point is because a lot of times these mains jets will not come out very easily. Okay, so what you may have to do is get a bread tie if your drill on your pin vise isn't long enough to reach, and feed it through until you break through whatever sediment that could potentially be inside this main jet. So keep that in mind, guys. Now, as I was saying, what I like to do is turn the carburetor up to where I can actually face it straight down, and I'll run my smallest drill in my index on the pin vise into the first passage here that I mentioned, which, as you can see, it's pretty clean. Then of course there's another passage right here, and I'll run my pin vise in it as well. This of course is the third passage. There's a fourth as well. And on a few models, guys, not all, there's a fifth. Sometimes there's a little tiny plug that gets pushed in over here on this side that doesn't actually have a hole in it. Okay, so you have to be kind of very vigilant and careful not to put a hole in it if it hasn't already got one. Okay, in my case mine has one, so I'm just using, like I said, the small little drill on the vise here, on the pin vise, and I'm going to feed it through. Now I want to note, guys, that this particular passage is for gasoline to make its way from the fuel pump into this top body of this carburetor here, if you will. It actually comes through this hole, and then of course it makes its way through the fuel inlet needle, if you will, or seat, shall we say, which in turn fills up this bowl full of gasoline. So it's imperative that you make sure that this passage here and this passage here is clean, as well as these passages. And once again, I'm just using the small little drill on the pin vise to feed into this top body portion of this carburetor. And as you can see, this, of course, this passage is clear. This passage is clear as well, and so is this one. From here, guys, I like to get some carb cleaner, and all I do is make absolutely sure. Now, you do not want to spray this straight down, because these passages are open now, and they can potentially spray you in the eyes if you spray carb cleaner directly into your passages here. So bear that in mind, guys. What I like to do is turn my head. I'm going to pull this off camera, of course, and spray out these passages individually. So I apologize for it not being on camera, guys, but you're not really missing anything. I'm just doing this so you guys can be reassured that all the passages are clear. So as you can see, I've just sprayed that with carb cleaner. And of course, each of these passages proved to be just fine. Clean as they could possibly be. Now guys, what I'm going to try to do here is spray directly down into this carburetor's passages so I can show you on camera what you should be expecting. Now I apologize if I'm not perfectly in camera here, guys, but I'm trying, okay? As you can see, this passage here actually has a small opening at the bottom on this channel right here. So the carburetor cleaner was able to come through. This one has a passage on this side. If you look, you'll see it spray. Okay? And this is basically just a vent really for the carburetor. This passage here as you saw basically was exactly like this passage here. It's just got a small little cavity that it's open to, and the gasoline can make its way on this side as well. Now on to the lower body. As I mentioned, you want to make sure that all your passages are clear, which we've done. You want to take your carb cleaner and spray these out as well. And once again, I'm taking it off camera, guys. Now I want to note, guys, that once you've cleaned these passages, you're going to find that the carburetor cleaner will make its way all the way down to right here as well. Okay, and this of course is just your hole for your idle mixture valve. What I like to do is take carburetor cleaner, stick it straight down into the idle mixture valve and spray. Okay, so it's not too big a deal. And as you can see, it kind of bubbles up here as well. You can also do it from the top, which I apologize for throwing the carburetor, guys. I'll do it from the top. And as you can see, this passage is fairly clean. Of course, I'll spray this one. And you do not want to do this without some kind of safety goggles, guys, because this stuff can spray back in your eyes. And I'll be honest, carburetor cleaner burns like crazy if you get it in your eyes. I'm telling you this from experience. I've done it several times. And of course you want to spray through this. And of course you want to spray through this side as well, which as you can see, that was the one I was telling you about. And on this side as well. So once the carburetor has been thoroughly cleaned, you can start your reassembly. Now for the reassembly of this carburetor, guys, you can go about it many different ways. What I recommend you do is you start off with your main jet here, if you've taken it out. Now like I say, in some situations these jets get stuck in there extremely tight. You cannot take them out. It's a pain in the butt, guys, but it's just an evident fact that we all have to deal with. So, you know, I was just fortunate with this one that I got it out. So we're going to start off by taking this jet, once it's been cleaned, and placing it right back into the carburetor in its respective place. This is also a 5mm Allen wrench. From here, once we have that jet installed, what I like to do is take the plug, which as you see, and I like to add just a little bit of lithium grease to the threads. Now, there are some people out there that would not suggest putting lithium grease in it. I'll be honest, guys, it doesn't hurt anything at all to do it, okay? And it's my preferred method, because if you ever have to take it apart again, it just makes for a lot easier removal, and you won't have all that powder residue in the future. So all I'm doing is just doing this by hand. Of course, you would be using a 5/8 wrench to kind of snug that up. Okay. From here, what I like to do is I like to get my float as well as my upper body. Okay. I apply a new gasket. Now, of course, this gasket isn't used, but in truth, I would be using a new gasket if I was going to, of course, be using this carburetor. And I apply it like so. Keep in mind, you want to make sure that your opening for your fuel passage is there. On some of these, the fuel passage can actually get closed very easily. See, it's quite simple. Just by turning this around, you can see that gasket goes on just fine, but the fuel opening isn't exposed, so you can have problems just by improperly installing this gasket. So make sure that your gasket is properly installed. Now from here, what I like to do is take my inlet needle and apply it to my float. Then from here I'll just turn the float over like so, and I'll feed it straight down. I take my hinge pin and I retain my float. Now guys, all I'm doing is taking it off camera long enough to push this hinge pin in, as you see. Okay, I just grab the little screwdriver and push my hinge pin in. Now I want to note, guys, that on these carburetors, you want to maintain this float's level, okay? And the easiest way to do that is actually to get a level and put on it, or you can take a screwdriver from underneath and bend the tabs slightly till you achieve the carburetor being level. And it's pretty simple. It's not really rocket science. You don't have to, you know, go after it too aggressively. But once you're done, you should have a float that remains somewhat level like this. Now from here, I recommend taking the lower body of the carburetor and applying the top. Okay? All I'm doing, guys, is just taking the lower body, applying it to the top, and flipping it over. Pretty simple, right? Taking the screws that of course would have been on the top of the carburetor, the upper body, shall we say, and screwing them in. Very, very simple process. Guys, I apologize. Looking at the camera and I'm seeing that I'm running out of time on it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make an additional video to this showing how the fuel pump gets assembled onto this carburetor. Like I said, I wasn't expecting this, guys, so I'm going to have to basically end this video, tighten up the screws, okay? And then of course when you get back in the next video, or shall I say when I get back in the next video, I'll be applying the fuel pump body to its respective place here on the carburetor.